Hello everyone, we're the Lords of the Sith, and today we're going to talk about Kylo and his redemption and how it's gonna happen. I mean, we don't know how it's gonna happen or what we think needs to happen for him to redeem himself. My name is Denise and I'm here with Lee.
Hi everybody!
Something that I hear a lot from people who don't like Kylo and who don't like Reylo, and they say, he has to pay for what he's done. And this is great news because we agree, guys, we agree. He has to pay. In a certain way, he has to pay, right? He did wrong things and he has to pay. Awesome, we all agree. So that's one thing that we're going to discuss, how this payment is going to happen.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, for me, the action that Kylo did as far as killing his dad, that's something that he has to answer for it. And I don't think that's a bad thing for him, actually. I think it would be very bad if he can just say, okay, that's it, and I'm sorry, and let's move on. You know, I think that he has to make some penance, right? Mm-hmm. And now, that's a separate question from, because he did this thing, he can never find forgiveness no matter what he does, which is what it feels like a lot of the people who just don't care for Kylo or Reylo say, that basically he's doomed, which is so not Star Wars to me, right?
Yeah.
So I do think that Kylo has an opportunity for rehabilitating his life, but I think he does need to basically make some kind of penance. And what that means, though, that's the question.
Yeah, I agree. And I find that, you know, with Vader, we have the fact that he was kind of redeemed. I mean, he didn't really, well, he suffered when he was Vader in a way, but it's interesting that George Lucas, when he made the prequels, remember he'd made it afterwards, he could have chosen to lessen his crimes, right? And instead he makes him do one of the worst crimes, which is the killing of innocents, which wasn't necessary for the story, you know. He didn't have to make him force choke his pregnant wife, right? But he really put him down in the bottom in terms of crimes, but in a way it's good because it means even if you go to the bottom, there is still hope, there is still chance. I think that's what Lucas meant to do.
Absolutely, and I think that's such an important message, right? And it's so interesting for me how Star Wars fans who don't like Kylo Ren can see that with Vader and agree. But when it comes to Kylo, it's like, no, he's done. He's never going to be able to come back from this. But here's the thing, Denise, what you said there I think is interesting because it's true that people say, well, Vader earned his redemption, you know, just like in the last 5 minutes of his life by defending his son and killing the emperor, and that was it. But if you think about it, I mean, he did do penance. Like, he suffered tremendously. He lost, like, his limbs and his beautiful hair. He basically suffered for decades, thinking that he murdered Padme. And who's to say that some of these factors didn't influence the fact that when he met Luke, he was ready to turn him to the light side again. So I think that's very interesting how it happened in Vader's case. I don't think that's what's going to happen to Kylo, though. I don't think that we're going to see Kylo maimed and mutilated and, you know, half machine.
Yeah, but he's been suffering, though, right?
He has been suffering, and that's the thing that I don't think people acknowledge. Some people, because they feel like he's just being like emo, whiny, whatever, but it's suffering. He's been suffering since he was a kid. Been suffering, and we talked about that quite a bit in his psychology episode, how being rejected, being abandoned emotionally by his parents, even that's not their intention, that's what happened essentially. And also his relationship with Snoke and his ideas about himself. I mean, this is a person who has suffered. So on the one hand, I guess I can understand where people say, well, he suffered enough, you know, he doesn't have to suffer anymore. Mm-hmm. But then you have Han's crime. I mean, that's something that I think needs to be answered. At least that's the way I see it.
Yeah, I think he did suffer for the crime, but what he lacks right now is realizing where his suffering is coming from. Because, you know, he was already in pain, he was already suffering when he killed Han, but he didn't understand the reason for his suffering. So I think he needs to realize that, but I think a little bit of his pain is going to count. I thought about it when I was reading Harry Potter for my son, and his Dumbledore says, how could Voldemort redeem his soul or put his soul together? And he says it's excruciatingly painful. You know, he would need to feel deeply everything that he has done. But for Kylo, he's already feeling it. He just needs to understand why he's feeling it. I mean, not just that, and a little bit more, right?
Yeah, well, I agree with you again. And what I would say is this. when I'm saying that Kylo needs to have some consequences for what he's done, I don't necessarily mean more suffering, because I think he suffered it already quite a bit, tremendously. I mean consequences for what he's done. Like, we can't just all pretend that nothing happened and he can be reintegrated, and take Leia's place in the Resistance. I think that there are some bridges that after they've been burned, they can't really be remade again. So I don't think and that's just my personal opinion, I just don't think that it would sit well, even with Kylo, to just pretend that nothing happened, like I help you guys out in the war, and then now I get to, become Ben Solo again, and that's it, and it's like nothing happened. So I see that once that path was taken, it's gonna change, it's gonna shift things for him. So I guess I remember how Yoda said, once you start down the dark path, forever will it dominate your destiny. I don't think that means that you can never come back from the dark side, but meaning that once you've made certain choices, that does cast a shadow and makes it so that some roads can't be taken again. So
no, I agree. And also there is something to do with storytelling and how stories have meaning for us, right? We look at stories, there's a way to see, are these characters' actions gonna make him happy, and he's making wrong actions and wrong decisions. So when you look at a story as something that you can reflect yourself upon or you can learn from, right? I mean, it's not that it needs to be an example. You want to see that, not that he has to suffer to pay, but how he has to come back from it in a way that you believe it, and that you believe that he's doing it. And it's funny, I got the idea, I wanted to do this episode because I write, and I have one book that doesn't sell at all, and I was writing the sequel, and I wanted to finish it because it's not gonna sell. And I need like a happy ending, but then I had a character that did lots of bad things, and I said, I cannot give this character a happy ending because he didn't earn it, and I feel that in stories you need to earn it, and you need to see them earning it. And I know like in Vader's case, it's very fast, it's very brief, but he does something enormous and he earns it. And it's also the love of his son, right?
But so I guess what we're both agreeing on is that Kylo can still earn a happy ending, but it
Yes.
has to be earned.
Yes.
It can't just be like a moment of, oh, I really screwed up, huh? Okay. I won't do it again. I won't kill any more dads. No, it's been done. So now, there have to be some kind of consequences for that. But what consequences mean, I guess that's where we differ with the people who say, he's done for, that's it. He can't be rehabilitated ever again. So my question for you, Denise, is what do you think needs to happen for Kylo Ren to be able to
redeem himself? First, he needs to understand. He needs to have a moment of understanding. That's important in any story. I think that character understands and has that insight, that moment of change. So understanding first, and second, maybe some kind of sacrifice and some gesture that shows him. So I think some kind of sacrifice, I don't know what exactly, that could work. Something that's not selfish.
Again, we agree. We're definitely on the same page. I wonder though if, in general terms we agree, but I wonder what that means to you. So for me, what it means is if Kylo were to do something for Rey because he loves Rey, I think that would be, in a way, a little selfish. So I think just saving Rey is not enough for me. You know what I mean?
I agree.
I think that he does have to do something selfless. So for me, it would be way more meaningful if he did something for the greater good because he wants to, not just because of Rey. And I guess for people who aren't Reylos who are listening to us, that might be confusing because it's like, wait a minute, you guys are saying the sequel trilogy is all about Reylo. We talk about that almost every episode that we make. But really, it is about Reylo, but it is about Kylo Ren as well. And he is in a position where he has just screwed up tremendously at each step. And for him to come back, I think that it really has to click. Like you're saying, he has to have a moment of realization, of self-reflection, and then a decision to change and do something, not just because of himself, but because of the greater good.
Yeah, I agree with you. And also, we have seen him saving Rey already, right? He did make a sacrifice because, in a way, even though he hated Snoke, he was kind of like this weird father figure for him. Somebody he went to Snoke for advice, for support, right? We saw it in The Force Awakens, and to kill him was so. he has already saved Rey, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can't do that again. But yes, maybe saving somebody, maybe giving up something. I don't know. That's why maybe doing something to like risking his life, but maybe in a way that he doesn't die. I've said that I don't really mind if he kind of dies in the end, but he can't die. I mean, he can't die, I think, for his redemption, because then it's boring. Because then, but if he risks his life for something great, or if he gives up something that's really big, that could be interesting.
Or like if he does die and the Force ghosts hold hands and chant and bring him back and all this stuff. But seriously, I think part of it is also the thing about power for the sake of power. Power for the sake of protecting myself, I think, is the main reason why he wanted to be Remper. And I think that if he lets go of that power because he realizes that he maybe is not in the best position to wield it and it won't have good outcomes for the greater good, I think that would be a good sacrifice. And then for me, most meaningful, believe it or not, I'm not the biggest Poe fan, as you know. I do love Finn, though. But for me, it would be super meaningful if he were to save at expense at his expense, save Poe or Finn because they are important for the greater good. And also, even if it's because they're important to Rey, but if he realizes that they need to live in order for the fight against good and evil to be eventually won, and for him to do something for that purpose. And even if he doesn't, especially because he doesn't really care for either of them either. So, if that makes sense.
Well, Finn would make more sense, right? I still think Poe Poe is not in that plot.
I know you. It's really funny because you like Poe, but I feel like you keep kind of making him more insignificant each time you talk about him. But I don't like Poe, but I actually do respect Poe a little bit more in that sense in terms of plot importance, I think, Denise.
Yeah, I know.
Because I do think, for me, Poe is going to be the new Leia,
Yes, I agree.
So then that means that he is important.
Yes, I agree.
I think that he will share that role with Finn, though. So that's where I don't know if you agree with that, but I do think that because initially that role I feel was going to Finn. I mentioned that before because Poe is supposed to be dead in The Force Awakens, but now that they kept him around, I think he and Finn come as a set in a way, at least as far as sharing leadership, right? So, yes. But either way, I do think that Finn and Kylo Ren have some room for eventually coming to an understanding because of Rey, and also because they're similar in a way that no one else is. They're the two defectors of the First Order, right? So they're foils for each other, and there's some really nice themes that they share that echo in each other's arcs. But with Poe, it's a little bit, Poe is like the favorite son of Leia, so I think there's some animosity there from Kylo's behalf. And I think it would be super cool if he actually ended up saving Poe.
No, I agree with you actually. Now, if we think of Poe as a surrogate son and as a new Leia, which he has been, I find that he has been set up to be, it kind of makes sense. It would make sense if Kylo kind of saved him. I agree with you now.
Okay, well, what about as far as Kylo and the First Order?
Burn, burn, burn. No, I don't know. I think if he needs to try to use it for good or maybe just leave it, but it needs to be in a way that's not super convenient, because if it's convenient, then it's not as meaningful, right? If, let's say, Hux takes the First Order and then he's forced to go and everything. And so we need to see what's going to happen. And we might have the Knights of Ren there, right? Which could play a role in there. But regardless of what happens, who comes as a villain, it needs to be something that it is his decision and he is making a conscious decision to do good. That would really resonate, and to make up for his mistakes. Not only, go where it's convenient, I think. What do you think?
I agree. I've never liked the idea of Kylo getting overthrown by Hux or by someone else in the First Order and then having to escape, in the middle of the night and then going to the Resistance because he has nowhere to go. I hate the idea of Kylo being so incompetent, because I think that's already been an issue with the way some people perceived him in The Force Awakens. So they've done such a good job of actually improving his image, right, in TLJ. So I don't want him to regress in that sense. I don't want him to just kind of be self-serving either, like we were saying. If he were to leave the First Order, I want it to be because it no longer aligns with his moral views. I don't think it ever has aligned with his moral views anyway. It was basically just a vehicle for him, right? But if he does leave, I don't want it to be because he has got no other choice.
That I agree as well. Okay, so what about the characters? I'm looking forward to whatever's gonna happen between him and Leia, and I think that's gonna have a huge impact in his redemption, and also how
Yeah.
Leia is going to. Because I find that Leia in the Force Awakens, she believed in him, she wanted him back, and then at the end of the Last Jedi, she was like, "Oh, he's gone." But that was the low point, right? The low point of the trilogy, the low point of the where everything goes wrong. And I think that was the meaning of her saying, "Oh, my son is gone," which was painful. I didn't like to see that. But I think she needs to, not she needs to, I think her acceptance or her forgiveness would mean a lot for him and for the audience as well. And that's something that I would like to see. What
Yeah, I
the,
agree. I actually was hoping all along that Leia would continue to keep hope, and say that no matter what, I know he's going to come back eventually. So it was painful, and I did not like to see her, her take on the whole situation in TLJ. But I am hopeful that because there's this talk of all this footage, right, that they have, that maybe Carrie Fisher and Adam Driver did get to film some scenes together. That would be amazing. And that Kylo will get to make amends with his family,
Mhm.
with his mother, and hopefully with his dad in some meaningful way too. So I think
Yes.
that would be really good. And I don't know if that would be a catalyst of everything for him, or if it will be just kind of like a reward at the end when he, makes all the amends and then he gets to reunite and with her again or something like that. But either way, I think it's really important for that piece to be in place as well for his redemption eventually.
Yeah, I agree, and I think they could. I still think that they could do a lot with voice only, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because with voice, they can just like remix the words and do whatever. There's a lot of freedom there, and he could. I don't know. He could be alone and hearing the voice. I mean, and I think I agree with you. It could be one of the catalysts, and it could also be, like kind of like the prize, like having his mother forgive him, which I think it's gonna resonate a lot for
Mm-hmm.
the audiences and everything. And I think we're gonna have another thing with Luke, right? Since Mark Hamill is in the movie, we're definitely gonna see Force Ghost Luke. So what do you think is gonna happen?
Well, I'm really hopeful that Luke will make good on his promise to continue pestering Kylo. I think it would be really nice if we had the opportunity to see them kind of banter with each other where Luke's kind of just bugging Kylo, but then eventually they get to have a real conversation and that Luke can, ask him for forgiveness for what he did. And that Kylo can accept that more graciously than I bet you are, or I'm sure you are, or whatever he said. So I think I'm really looking forward to that actually.
Actually, I was thinking about it and thinking that in The Last Jedi, I liked the way he died. I thought it was okay. But I thought it was his sacrifice because he also made a mistake writing that movie. And he was doing his penance and his sacrifice as well in terms of what he did for Kylo. I think it resonates in that way. But I agree. I think we're going to see something like that, maybe some flashbacks. Something else that they can do a little bit is go back a little bit on his past, on Kylo's past, and maybe explain more what he's done. And that's something that's more maybe for us, the audience, to be able to forgive him more. We already got a little bit of that in The Last Jedi, and maybe for him to look back and see where things went. But I wouldn't want his guilt to be erased, because then, well, if he has no guilt, then he cannot be redeemed, because there is nothing to be redeemed of. So that's something that I want to see a little bit more of the past, but he needs to still have made his own choices so that it's interesting as a story. What do you think?
Well, I think the thing about us being able to see him as a child, to feel more empathy for him, the people who aren't there already, because I've been there from day one. I think that's really important because there's still a lot of people who just plain hate the character and who don't really understand what's going on. So I think making it just clear that he was a kid, this is what he went through, and that doesn't have to take up too much time, like a minute, or less, a few flashbacks or something. I think they were trying to do that at some point because there were the little boy that Rey
Mm-hmm.
sees when she has her vision in The Force Awakens, they cut that out, and I thought that was interesting. Maybe they didn't want to. I have no idea why they did that, but hopefully we will get to see some kind of flashback of him. And this is an important thing. For some people, no matter what Kylo does, he's never going to be able to do enough penance, right? But I think the majority of people who are still thinking that he can't be redeemed would be able to be convinced if the movie did something to help them along. Kind of like the whole Reylo thing. A lot of people who never saw Reylo in The Force Awakens totally saw it in TLJ. So I think that there are ways that the story could help along with the redemption of Kylo by lessening the guilt in a way, not justifying what he did, but explaining why he got to that point. So one of those things we've already talked about is maybe he actually didn't do as many bad things as we think he does. Like, for example, with the students and Luke's academy. Maybe it wasn't Kylo who killed them, right? We said maybe somebody else came. Maybe Snoke went and killed everybody. I don't think that he went and killed all the Padawans. That I've never thought that he did that. There are people who say that he didn't kill Han Solo. That Han Solo activated the lightsaber because he knew that if Kylo and him walked off the bridge together, they would be shot at and killed, so he sacrificed himself. I don't believe that for a second. I think Han did sacrifice himself in a way for his son, because I think part of him knew when he was going to walk out there that there was a big chance that he wouldn't walk away, alive. But I don't think that he ignited the lightsaber and killed himself to save Kylo. So, but some people speculate that, right? And then there's other theories, Denise. What have you heard?
Yeah, I know that because there is this Snoke this Snoke theme when he kills, and so people think that he was kind of like possessed by Snoke when he killed Han, but he has this Snoke influence. Snoke was influencing him, and that is another element that I think is going to be used, right? How much he was influenced and everything. But for the patricide to be meaningful, and it's meaningful in terms of storytelling, it needs to be a real patricide, right? Not oops, I was.
Yeah, no, I would hate the idea of like Kylo Ren being under some kind of weird mind control, because it just takes away his agency, and it takes away like you said, the meaning of his story. Like, we already went through this with him. Yeah. So I don't think that that should be minimized in any way. It happened and it's terrible. But the patricide makes sense from a psychological standpoint and from a story standpoint. We talked about this before in the Kylo Ren psych episode and the masculinity in Star Wars episode, that Kylo Ren, by killing his dad, he was really trying to kill a part of himself. He was trying to establish his own identity as Kylo Ren and distance himself from Ben Solo. He thought that was going to be the definitive thing that he needed to do to make that happen. And quite the contrary. That actually did not have the intended effect. Even Adam Driver said that in an interview, that he thought patricide's not all it's cracked up to be, or something like that. So, that action is important for his story. And to now come back and say that he was somehow possessed by Snoke and he didn't really decide to do it, I think that would be a big disservice to his arc. And I don't think that's what they're going to do. But certainly, I think it would help to show, the influence that Snoke had on him in his formative years, because we read about that. He was kind of whispering to Kylo, and from the womb, basically, there were influences that were coming. So I think that is important, because it tells you that maybe Ben Solo was having a distorted image of himself, his family, maybe his grandfather, because of Snoke's influence, And so now he's going to be able to see the reality of the situation and understand how he misjudged and made, a terrible mistake, and then feel bad about it. I think he already feels bad about it, but like you said, it hasn't really clicked.
No. Yeah. When he kills Han, he's being torn apart, and he wants to kill the part of him that is causing him pain. But he kills the wrong part. Mm-hmm. It was the wrong part. He should have killed the Kylo Ren and Snoke, not Ben Solo and Han. He did the opposite of what he should have done, which is very meaningful in terms of storytelling, and even something that I think resonates, because sometimes we want to solve a problem and we go there and do the very worst thing that we could do, right? And I think it's interesting in that way.
Yeah. That metaphor that you have, Denise, for the metallic hand of Vader being the start of how he transformed from Anakin into Vader, and how he eventually becomes more machine than man, but there's still that human Anakin part of him. With Kylo Ren, it's actually like there's a reverse arc going on, a reverse Anakin arc. So it's actually the opposite, where when he has this mask and he's trying to be Kylo Ren, more machine than man, he thinks that's the solution because he doesn't want to be human and feel. He doesn't want to be the boy who's suffering. So by trying to kill, his dad and Ben Solo, he thinks that he will never feel pain again. So of course it means a lot, and it's something that he will have to make amends for, but erasing it from the story doesn't make any sense to me either.
No. And what about Rey? How can Rey forgive him and make babies with him? Because I think I really like Star Wars, right? Disney bought it. They didn't pay billions to throw it away. I think the saga is gonna continue. So we've established that Rey and Kylo need to make babies for story as well, but there is also the Skywalker Saga. So what needs to happen there for her?
Well, I think this actually ties in nicely with our Rey psychology episode, because the premise there on my end is that Rey has a split view of herself that she needs to integrate. So she's basically disavowing anything imperfect, any flaws, because she wants to be perfect so that she won't be abandoned. So she doesn't want to acknowledge anything about herself that isn't great, perfect, awesome Rey. So, and I think she's viewing Ben Solo in that way as well, where she thinks that Kylo Ren and Ben Solo are two different people. So I think she needs to integrate her view of him and understand that he is Ben Solo, but he does have this Kylo Ren aspect to him. And I think that with his actions, seeking to turn from the dark side and towards the light, I think that she can come to accept him fully. But I think she already loves him. I think she already cares about him deeply anyway. She can't be with him. She made that clear in that door shutting scene, right? And that's important because we've said this so many times before. If she's gonna accept him not repenting, not deciding to change, it would just be a repeat of basically Amidala, doomed.
Yes.
And her corrupted, and that can't happen. That would not make sense also in terms of the bigger picture, right? So if we're thinking about Reylo as basically a reincarnation of Amidala in a thematic sense, where it's like the new and improved version of Amidala that has already gone through several cycles of incarnations, right? To burn off basically the bad parts, and it's now like the ideal version of the couple, then it doesn't make any sense for her to stay with him in that moment. But I think that her heart is already with him because she saw, for that moment of the hand touching, she saw the real person who's there, just like he saw into her. Yes. So I think it's definitely possible. In a sense, I think that she already knows the potential that is there in him. But he does have to show her that he's willing to actually become that person. That being said, her idealized version of Ben Solo doesn't exist. The one that she had in her mind when she went to rescue him, I don't think that person exists, and I think she needs to realize that nobody's completely perfect, no matter how much you want them to be. And I think eventually she'll accept and forgive him, but he needs to show her that he's going to put in the work. So I think that's going to play out in 9. Now, how can that happen? I think, that looking at it through Rey's perspective, just like for us, Denise, if we say, well, if he does something good, but it's self-serving, it's not that meaningful. But if he does something good for the greater good, even sacrificing himself in some way, I think that's the sign that she'll need to see, that he's changing.
Yes, I think he needs to. I agree with you. And I think she needs to witness some actions towards making amends, right? So if he does take some actions to make up for what he's done, or for the good of the galaxy, or for something that's not selfish and not for power, and she needs to see those actions so that she can trust him, because she trusted him at one point and she was disappointed, right? And now for her to trust him again, she needs to really see that he has changed. And I think it's important that he changes for himself, by himself. That's something we have been saying from day one, right? Since The Force Awakens, that even though we think it's about him coming together with Rey, it's not about him changing for her, because that's stupid and boring, and it doesn't really work, and it has no meaning, right? We want to see something that has meaning for us, I think.
Exactly. And all these kind of jokes about her dragging his butt back to the light, and the thing about her being a scavenger and being able to then discern between what's junk and what's really valuable, and being persevering, and trying to restore things to their former glory. That's great, but that's only one part of it. That's basically her motivation, is seeing that there's a potential in him, but he's got to do the work. It's about his destiny and his decision to take control of his life. She can't do that for him, and if she does, it won't mean as much.
Yes, I think there's a lot of metaphors, especially in The Force Awakens, to how she is this, like you said, this scavenger, and there's the thing with the Millennium Falcon, the fact that she's Rey, but like a ray of light, it's something that he needs to embrace, right? And I think she serves as the inspiration, but not, it needs to be his decision, but not for her, for himself, because he is suffering, he has been suffering, and he needs to understand why, and understand that he made wrong decisions, right?
That's very key there. What, as far as Rey, in a way being a catalyst for him, but also an inspiration for him, because Rey and Ben Solo are foils to each other in a way too. And in many ways, she's stepped into the space that he's not occupying in his own life. Back with the Resistance, at his mom's side, at Han's side, at Chewie's
Yes.
side. That should have been Ben, and he's not there, and she's become kind of like the new Ben. She's become Han Jr. essentially, right? You talked about that when
Yeah.
he was looking to bring her on board and all that stuff. So they are bound together, not just by the Force, but also by the way that their arcs are playing out side by side. And as she's going through these same pitfalls that he went through, except that she's not falling to the dark side, so she can be an inspiration to him, and he can understand what she's going through in a way that no one else can, because there aren't any other Force users like that. So they will help each other in that way. Before anybody says it, well, why is she in love with him? Why does she care about him? And why should she be with him? It's all good if she's with him. It will help him. What does Rey get out of it? And we talked about how Rey needs to be shown acceptance and forgiveness after somebody sees who she really is, with flaws and everything else that she has, right? And he's the one who can see her better than anyone else can, because he can see deeply into her through the Force bond, but also through what they share, in terms of being in a unique position compared to each other as opposed to any other character. So he can see her for who she really is, and he knows her better than anybody else in the story. And yet, he doesn't jump on some spaceship and leave her and abandon her like her parents did. He'll be there for her, and he'll love her in spite of her flaws, and that's what she really needs. So I think
Yes.
it's beautiful.
It's beautiful. I made the joke that they need to make babies. It's a joke, but it's not a joke. It's like, duh, that has to be the ending, right? But in terms of meaning, I agree with you. And in The Force Awakens, we had that. There was a beautiful moment of connection, right? That they feel something together, but yeah, visually it didn't really come through. Let's agree there. But in The Last Jedi, it really came through visually, how they have this special connection, which I think is reason enough to fall in love with someone, that really connecting on a deep level. And so it's not about who is the best person, because, or who, like, if some people say, oh, it's Finn is a better person, but well, he has, or even regardless of the fact that he already has Rose, or, but it's not about that. It's about connecting. So I really think it's good for her as well in that sense. But she can't connect with someone that's hurting himself and hurting others so badly, right? Because it's gonna just cause more pain.
I mean, she already has connected with that person, but she can't join her life with his under those circumstances. That, again, that would just be Padme's tragedy part 2. Ain't nobody got time for that. This is this is high stakes stuff, because we're at, quote, the end of the saga, although we know that's not the case, but let's say the end of the saga for the next 5 to 10 years at least. So we need to see these things, these storylines kind of come together and wrap up in a way that makes sense for the message of Star Wars, which is why, again, the stakes are high for Kylo Ren, and he can't just be discarded and thrown away like some people seem to want, right? It doesn't make sense. For me, one of the things that it was almost like a confirmation that we're heading in the right direction with our speculation from day one was the fact that, like you said earlier, Denise, Luke Skywalker sacrificed himself for Ben because, and people were saying, well, why didn't he just travel to, to Crate to face Kylo Ren and stop him?
Yeah.
Well, because one of them would have been dead. What's the point in that? If Kylo kills Luke, it's going to be that much harder for him to come back, from the dark side. It's only going to actually worsen things for him. And if Luke kills Ben, that would just be tragic.
That would be horrible, he felt so bad. But I agree, I thought it was brilliant the way that Luke did that and how he allowed Kylo to confront him, right? In a way, it's almost a little bit with the Force visions with Rey. They had to talk and not go at each other's throats. But with Luke, they did fight a little bit and then they were able to talk without killing each other. So I think it was really good, but they're going to be able to talk even more now that he's a Force ghost. And I think that's going to be super important.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's too bad that we don't get to see more from, or maybe, who knows, maybe Luke will actually tell Ben, that part of the reason why I had those problems with you where I just suspected you and was afraid of what you would do is because of my dad. I have trouble because of what happened with Anakin, and I never got it to resolve that in some, better way in a line of dialogue, but something like that for Ben to understand. Now, that brings me to the next point. What about Anakin? What do you think?
I think it would be so much fun if you saw Force Ghost Anakin saying, dude, dark side sucks. What are you doing? And I wanted to see, I would love to see Hayden, but I don't think it's happening unless they're keeping it really, really under wraps. What do you think?
I think it's happening. I've been thinking it's going to happen from day one because here's the thing, and this is something I've been saying from the first time that I saw The Force Awakens, that moment where Kylo says to the mask, he's praying to the mask, and he's like, show me again the power of the dark side. I don't think for a second that Anakin, Force Ghost Anakin, was communicating with Kylo to turn him to the dark side. No. So I think that if Ben Solo thought that his grandfather was showing him, how awesome the dark side is, it wasn't really Anakin that was involved in that at all. I think it was a deception by Snoke. So I think that, and that I think is really important because if that was one of the things that helped Kylo to fall to the dark side, it's got to be resolved for him to be able to climb back out and realize that he's been wrong. So I think it would be so important for Anakin to show up in some way and let Ben know, like, no, that's not true. This is terrible. Look what happened. Look at how I suffer. All this stuff, or whatever it is that he has to say. But I think that would be important too because what has helped Ben to basically separate himself and distance himself from his family is this idealized version of monster Darth Vader who doesn't really exist. So I think he needs to see that, And I would love to see Hayden. Oh my God. And I do think they can keep it under wraps. There were some leaks with air quotes that supposedly, Anakin's going to appear to Rey to show her how to rebuild the lightsaber, which fine, I guess he gets around, but the main person he has to visit is Ben Solo, obviously.
But remember, he's gonna visit her because he's her grandfather. Come on.
Or because he is her. She is Anakin.
Oh, he is her, right. But she sees herself. I forgot. No, but I do agree with you. But that, that what we had in The Force Awakens with how he idolized his grandfather, it needs to be resolved. It ties in with what we've talked about masculinity as Vader as symbolizing this hyper masculinity that doesn't really exist, and it's not something that people should aspire to. And I think it would tie really well if he got to see that, and if he understood that it's not really who Vader even is. But I don't think it's necessary to see Force Ghost Anakin.
No, I don't think it's necessary.
But it would be good. It would be nice.
It would be good fan service in the good way, not like fan service like, yes, Luke is Rey's daughter. Rey is Luke's daughter, and Luke is gonna come save the day, like the kind of fan service that some people want. No, because that just would kind of tear everything down. But this would actually be fan service that would enhance the story, although it's not necessary. But here's the thing for me. This theme about Ben believing that he can turn his back on his legacy and build a new legacy for himself under an assumed name. Like, I'm not a Skywalker, I'm not a Solo, I am Kylo Ren. That doesn't make sense, and it's not true. And I think that the line of The Last Jedi that people love so much, let the past die, kill it if you have to. I mean, that's bullshit again. That's not true for Ben's arc. What he has to do is accept the fact that he is a Solo and a Skywalker and that he comes from his family. He can't deny that truth. That's what, the first person who talked to him in the movie, in The Force Awakens, told him that to his face, and he couldn't handle hearing it, and that's why he killed Lor San Tekka, right? But he has to realize that that is actually the reality of it. That's the truth. This is who you are. You can't deny it. You can't run away from your legacy. So I think that's where the Force goes, would come in handy, because there isn't anyone else right now except for Leia who can help him to realize that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And also, in The Last Jedi, again, we have that right in the beginning. I'm not sure if it's the first thing, but when Snoke tells him that he has a solo heart, whatever, too much of his father, he's basically saying almost the same thing of that Lor San Tekka did, which is interesting in a different way, right?
Yep.
But
as a criticism, you can't. No matter what you do, you're never not going to be Han Solo's son, basically.
yes, which is exactly the same, right? And so it means that he needs to accept that, and I agree with you. So it's in a way it is the theme of the movie. One of the trilogy, right? One is, how can I live up to this legacy, and at the same time you cannot deny that legacy. You cannot say, oh no, I'm gonna just screw it all. You have to respect it, which is in a way is a little bit what Star Wars does with the sequel trilogy. Despite what some people think of The Last Jedi, but even The Last Jedi, in a way, for example, they don't really burn the text, Luke throws the saber, but Rey picks it up. So in a way, I think symbolically it means this: you don't really throw the past away. You might want to do it, but you don't really do it. You know what I'm saying?
I think you hit on something very profound, Denise. I think you definitely hit on something that a lot of people view as a criticism of The Last Jedi, where it's like, oh, we're subverting all of your expectations, but really it's not subverted. And that is a theme of the whole, sequel trilogy, basically, is that you can't really run away far enough. It's always going to be with you, your past and who you are. And self-deception is a big theme with both Ben Solo and with Rey. And in order for them to be able to basically complete their arcs in a healthy way, they have to acknowledge who they are. Rey Nobody and Ben Solo.
Yeah, she has to come to terms with her past as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And has to accept it and find a way to confront it. I don't know how, if they're really dead, but he has to accept it and understand it as well, right? And also find forgiveness in his heart. Forgive Luke, for example, and his parents if they did something wrong. I think forgiveness for the others is the first. If you cannot forgive the other people, you cannot forgive yourself, in a way. So if he can forgive himself, that is a good step as well. You know what I'm saying? Not forgive, oh, I didn't do anything, but deeply understand what he did wrong, and even then forgive him, like self-forgiveness. And that's a big something that's important as well, and an interesting message.
I agree.
So
the last thing I wanted to talk about is, where do we go from here in terms of the future for these characters? When we get to the end, how does it end for Kylo Ren? How should it end?
Yeah, I've said that I want him to die. It doesn't need to be a definite death, but some kind of symbolic transformation. After that, I don't know.
What does it mean, a symbolic transformation, Denise?
I don't know. He dies and comes back. For me, I think if we want him to be like a larger than life character, and if we want to make sure nobody comes 20 years from now and screws up with him, he would die. But no, he can. What can he do? Okay, I don't know what he can do. I think he could have a life of penance, of doing good, if he's going to live, right? Some people say, oh, he's going into exile and whatever. That's suffering, but that's not making up for what he's done. But if he could either teach or rebuild some kind of new order, not the old Jedi order, but something different. So if he can give, if he has something in his life that he can give, that would be very good, and it would tie in with the penance.
I agree with you. I don't know why people are so afraid of the word exile. I actually love the idea of a self imposed exile. I guess maybe that's the problem where people hear exile and they think it's everybody kicked him out, everybody voted him off, everybody said, you're get out of here and never come back. That's not what I think of when I think of exile. I think of him looking at what's left of, the resistance and realizing that it was his mother's life's work, but he's never really cared about the resistance. He actually has issues about the resistance because it took his mom away from him, or that's his perception of it, right? So I don't think that he'll feel happy and satisfied and, to actually just take over the resistance on behalf of his mom. It doesn't really kind of line up with him. I think he has a conflict with it on a very deep level. So what I see is that he doesn't really fit in there. He doesn't really fit in with these people. Also, he's too glamorous for wearing those, ugly clothes they wear. He needs something where he can shine. So I think he will basically help them all he can, give them his blessing, but he won't want to stay there. So I think he'll want to leave. And I consider that exile. That being said, he's not going to leave alone. I think he'll leave with Rey because she'll want to be with him. And I think they'll go together to explore the Force. I don't think either of them is an administrator. So I don't think they'll want to be in the government. I think they'll want to be Force users, which is what they are deep down. So I think they'll go to learn about the Force, explore the Force, and then teach, and that they both have so many talents. They both have so much to offer. So for them to have like a desk job or a government job, it doesn't make sense to me. I think that, they can do so much more good by making sure that the Force users out there have a way to control their gift and learn about the Force.
I agree with you, but that's why I don't like exile. Exile for me means going away. I never thought that he would take over the resistance. I think Poe should be the new leader of the resistance, or go and be the new, new emperor or whatever, president, whatever they decide. I think he needs to be a Force user and use that. But for me, the idea of exile means self-punishment and hiding, going away. Whereas, he could still do good away. Whereas I want him to, if he's going to make up for what he's done, it should be somewhere where he can do something meaningful. It could be far away if he's teaching new people. Yeah. But then it's a little bit like Luke, isn't it? But maybe he's going
with a wife and a kid, and without drinking, green breast milk or whatever and some rock. So I guess we're saying the same thing, except the word exile kind of, people don't like it. But what I'm saying is, I don't think he'll want to stay like, in Coruscant and have like a glamorous, glitzy, shiny center, like a celebrity, place. Mm-hmm. But I think he'll go and explore temples with Rey and then build their own temple or their own academy somewhere on some other planet, far from the bureaucracy of government stuff. You know what I mean? That's what I mean by exile. I don't mean that he can never come back. I mean that he just won't want part of like that kind of mundane admin stuff, like, I don't know. I just think that he'd like something more meaningful. And he can do a lot of good with Rey.
But because exile means that you cannot go back, it would be, technically, I don't know, go to somewhere else. But I agree with you, it's just a matter of terminology. But yeah, if they go to they could even go back to Act 2 because it's such a beautiful place, although they have bad memories from there. But, if they went to like an idyllic place like that and started again and started teaching maybe, and maybe we could pick up something that we had in The Last Jedi, teaching from the mistakes, that he can be a good teacher because he made all the mistakes that you can make. And that in fact is something that bodes well for his redemption. What can he do to the world? He can teach from his mistakes, right? So that's something interesting.
Yeah, I agree. But definitely there's going to be a Force baby. Come on. There's got to be a Reylo baby in there somewhere.
Oh, yeah. I think the next trilogy, they're going to give the next trilogy is going to have like a different name. The whatever saga. I want the Organa saga. I don't care what it is. And that's how they can say, see, the Skywalker Saga finished. But, I don't want to be cynical, but this is Disney, there's no way they're throwing it away, especially with the anthology movies not doing well, right? I mean, so imagine, what are they gonna do if they actually finish the Skywalker Saga? Well, they do have other trilogies, right? Yes, they can do unrelated trilogies, that's true, but you know, it's a risk. Whereas if you continue with the family saga, it's something that people will come and will be interested in watching, and it means money, and we're talking about a big corporation here, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry, but Star Wars is the Skywalkers.
Yes.
For the majority of people out there, there's a lot of people who don't really care about the Skywalkers and are Star Wars fans, and they like the cartoons and whatever, and you know, okay, fine, but that's not the majority of people. It's all about the Skywalker line, and this is the final representative of it. So you know, you best believe that he's not going to be bald and burning in a lava pit somewhere like Anakin.
Well, he could be bald.
No.
Depends on what burns. No, I'm just kidding. No, it would be repetitive, right? If it burns. And also, I don't think burning, I mean, for Anakin, I think it is something that helped with his redemption in a way, because it's burning and like for his sins, for what he done, because he did stuff that was really horrible right before. But in the case of Kylo, his punishment is his pain that he feels, and I think he might still feel some pain. Something bad could still happen to him, right? But not, I don't think physically. If it's physical, I don't think it's gonna be huge. I'm pretty sure he's gonna keep the hair, because it's his hair.
Are you kidding me? That hair. Oh my god. Anyway.
Yeah, so I just think that in general, we were discussing, and I think the idea is that with a kid, you know, if they do stuff that's wrong, you can't just let them get away, and you want them to learn from the experience and learn not to repeat. So I think that's the same thing with characters, right? And that's something that we want to see, and that's why we like Kylo Ren as a character, and because we want him to be able to really deeply understand what he's done and do something to make up for that. So
I agree.
Yeah. Okay, so this was it for today. Thank you very much for listening. Leave a comment, or if you have any questions, leave a question. It helps a lot if you like and subscribe, and you can also connect with us on social media and listen to us on iTunes and SoundCloud. Everything is in the description. Thank you very much for listening, and may the Force serve you well.